Now that we have our basic top-level navigation working, it's time to go ahead and flesh out the customer list view. So we're going to drop down here to our customer list view, which before just had a text block in it. And we're going to replace that with a data grid. Now that's quite a bit of code to stare at quickly. Let me just hit on the important parts here. So we've got a data grid that's binding to customers. That means our view model now needs to expose a customer's collection. We've got a set of 2 columns defined. The first one is bound to the full name property of the customer and will take up most of the row. And then we have a templated column that we're placing a button in to place an order for a given customer. That button is going to pass the customer by grabbing just the current data context for the cell. So this binding will grab a reference to the current customer for the row. The command itself sits out on our view model, or at least it will once we put it there. So to get to our view model from inside of this row, where the data context is not the view model, we have to break out of that local data context using a relative source binding. And that lets us walk up the visual tree until we get to the data grid, at which point we're in the part of the XAML where our view model is the current data context. So then we can set the path to the data context of the data grid, and then dot down into place order command, which we're going to add to our view model. So now let's jump over to the view model and add this customer's collection and the place order command. The customer's collection is pretty straightforward. We can just add a new property of type observable collection of customers. Now we need to be able to load customers into that customer collection. For that, we're going to need our repository. So the view model here can new up an instance of the repository as an initial crude attempt. In the next module, we'll get into dependency injection and show how we can use that to pass the repository in. But for now, let's just hard code it in here. So we new up an instance of the customer's repository and hold it in a member variable of the interface type. Now we need to trigger where are we going to load the customers into that collection. And because that's going to be an asynchronous load, using the loaded event of the view is actually a good way to go. We just have to wire it up with the behavior as we saw in a previous module. First, let's define the target method that we want to invoke when the loaded event fires. So here we can see that we're going to go out to our customer repository, call getCustomersAsync, await on that since it's an async method, and when it returns the value, we're going to pass it into the constructor of observable collection and populate our customer's property. Now we just need to call that when the event fires. And again, the quickest way to get that hooked up is to jump on over to Blend. So here we are in Blend with our same solution and our customers list view open in the Blend Designer. I'm going to make sure the user control root element is selected down here in the objects and timeline. And then I'll go up to Assets, Behaviors, and double click the call method action. That adds it as a child of that root element. And once we've done that, we can fill the rest out in the XAML editor. So I'll save here and drop back over to Visual Studio, which detects the change. So let's open the view now. And we can see at the top that it added those 2 namespaces of the Blend SDK. It added the triggers collection to our root element, and it added an event trigger, which we want to change to the loaded event, and a call method action underneath that, which we want to set the target object to just binding to get to a reference to our view model, and then the method to load customers. And with that in place, we should be able to run, click on customers, and behold, our customers load asynchronously. Now we just have to get this place order button wired up with a command in the view model. For that, we're going to drop back over to the view model here and define a command property called place order command. Now we need to initialize that in a constructor for the view model and point it to a handling method. Now we just need that handling method. And so we have the handling method. And just to make sure that's all wired up correctly, we can set a breakpoint here and run. Go to our customers view, click on place order, and you can see we're calling our command handler with a customer reference. So next up, we have to wire up actually navigating to an order view with that customer as context. And we'll tackle that in the next demo.